Life Stories.
On Zoom, on YouTube, and on Facebook. If you're watching this tonight, please encourage your friends to join us. It's going to be an amazing story you're going to hear tonight. Please get in touch with them and tell them to contact the number and to watch this wonderful story tonight. If you have any needs tonight, you need prayer, then please contact us on our hotline. The number's on your screen, 07943 550 or if you're outside the UK, +44 794 355 0287. You can phone, you can text or WhatsApp, and someone will get back to you as soon as possible if you have any needs there. You can also go to our website, LifeStoriesWorldwide.com, and you can find out all that's going on with Life Stories Worldwide. Well, we've had stories coming into us from all over the world. We've had stories from Australia, from New Zealand, from Africa, from India. We've had stories from all over the world. We go even further afield tonight because we have a story from the moon tonight. We have with us tonight a wonderful speaker, General Charles Duke. Charlie, as he's known, he started life as a test pilot in the United States, and then he became involved with the Apollo mission. He was involved with the Apollo 11 moon landing, but then with Apollo 16, he became the youngest man to ever walk on the moon. And he's going to share tonight the story of how he searched the heavens, but found peace on earth. And so it's time for liftoff. Charlie, over to you.
There we go. Well, thank you very much, Alan. I'm delighted to be here with everyone on live stream, and hope you enjoy my story. My wife, Dorothy, will join us in a while, and you'll get her side of the story of our life. So it's been a busy life for me. Alan said I was the youngest man to walk on the moon back in 1972 on Apollo 16. And I'm 85 years old, and I'm still the youngest man that walked on the moon. So hopefully, with Artemis coming on and the new missions to the moon, I can relinquish my title of being the youngest man on the moon. It's about time. A little bit about my background. I grew up in South Carolina, went to the United States Naval Academy, graduated in 1957, and while I was there at the Naval Academy, I fell in love with airplanes. And since there was no Air Force Academy back then, I could volunteer for the Air Force, which I did, and became a lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force. I got my wings in 1958. 1957, I was in flight school, and in October of that year, Sputnik went up. So beginning of the space age, it was the beginning of my career in the military. And 2 years later, I'm a qualified pilot on my way to Germany. And NASA picked the first group of astronauts. NASA was being formed up and staffed at that point. I went to Ramstein, Germany, and served for 3 years. In 1961, a very exciting year for us. The Berlin Wall was being built, very tense situation. And in April, no, let's see, April of 1961, Yuri Gagarin was the first human being to orbit the Earth. Shortly thereafter, in early May, Alan Shepard became the first astronaut, U.S. astronaut, to go into space. I had no desire to do that at that point, but I was amazed about 2 weeks later when President Kennedy announced that we were going to go to the moon by the end of 1969. And I thought that was an incredulous, outspoken promise, if you will, that we were going to land on the moon then, and really didn't believe him. In 1962, I went back to Massachusetts Institute of Technology to get a master's degree. It took 2 years there. In 1964, I graduated. I got married in 1963 to my wife, Dorothy. And then we moved to, when I graduated, I was accepted to test pilot school and went to test pilot school for July 65 until 66. And then in September, I applied for the astronaut program. In 1966, I was selected for NASA, and we moved to Houston, which is the home of the astronauts, and we were put right to work. It was a very busy time, learning to be an astronaut, learning about NASA, learning all of those procedures of the acronyms and all that NASA had that was unique to its missions. Since we were picked for the astronaut program to go to the moon, we had to learn geology. So we had a very extensive courses in geology that lasted for about 6 years. I did field trips all over the world and to learn how to identify various rocks. Well, when I got in 66, when I got to NASA, the course Apollo was well underway. It'd been 5 years underway, and they were moving quickly along. When it turned out that we had major setbacks in over a 2-year period. We had 3 astronauts killed in a fire at Kennedy Space Center. We had 4 astronauts killed in airplane accidents, 1 killed in a automobile accident. And from there, a lot of people began to retire, the original group. And so of the 54 astronauts that had been selected, there were only 42 of us that were available for training. During Apollo, we had 9 missions to the moon, 6 successful landings. I was on Apollo 16, and that was the 5th successful landing. In all of Apollo, I worked on 5 of the 9 missions to the moon. I was support crew for Apollo 10, which was the first mission that took the lunar module to the moon, but it wasn't capable of landing. So it was just going to be sort of a dress rehearsal for the Apollo 11, which would be our first landing attempt 2 months later. I was support crew for that, helped write the procedures for the lunar module, and was asked to be Capcom, which is capsule communicator in mission control. To explain Capcom, it's always an astronaut, and it's the only person in mission control who has the authority to actually talk to the crew. The rest of the mission controllers, the flight director, they talk within in the mission control room. So you're listening to that conversation in one ear, and in the other ear, you're basically listening to the crew for what information that they need. So it was a very demanding job, and that's why they picked the astronauts to do that job, because they want you to speak in pilot talk so that crews can understand. So right after that, Neil Armstrong invited me to be Capcom for his mission, which would be the first landing attempt on the moon. And so we had 2 months to get ready. We were ready to go when they launched on schedule in July of 1969. My job in mission control was Capcom again, and we were going to be the crew that was on duty in mission control during the landing attempt. Everything went well on that mission until we started our descent. And then we had communication problems. We had computer problems, which I thought was going to cause an abort. but we were well trained, and the flight dynamics officer understood what the problem with the computer, and we continued our descent. At 2,000 meters thereabouts, the vehicle pitches over and you can see the moon for the first time. And Neil reported that we can't land at this spot we're targeting into. There's too many boulders, craters. So he leveled off about 150 meters above the moon and flew across the lunar surface for several kilometers. At that point, he found a spot to land and he started down. Well, that used up a lot of our reserve fuel, and now we were minimum fuel. I called 60 seconds. That call meant he had 60 seconds to land, or at the end of that 60 seconds, we would call an abort. I then called 30 seconds, and they weren't on the ground, but they were close. And you can imagine the tension in mission control as you're 10 meters off the moon, but you're about to come to an abort situation. But 13 seconds later, Buzz Aldrin, the Lunar Module Pilot, said, "Contact, engine stop." And we knew they were on the moon successfully. I was very excited. Neil was calm as he could be. Armstrong came back and said, "Houston, Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed." Well, in my excitement, I couldn't even pronounce tranquility. It came out twang. But I corrected myself and said, "Roger, Tranquility, we copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot." And so that began their 24 plus hours on the moon. Our shift went off and another group came on. So when he actually stepped onto the moon, I was home with my family watching it like billions of other people around the world. Right after that, I got selected for backup crew for Apollo 13, trained for about more than 6 months, 8 or 9 months for that flight, and was in mission control to help recover them when that flight exploded on the way to the moon. We were very fortunate to get them back safely. Shortly after that, I began training on Apollo 16, which would be my chance to land on the moon. We were eventually scheduled for April of 1972. John Young was my commander. I was going to be on the moon with him. It turned out TK Mattingly had gotten bumped off Apollo 13 because of the measles and came back on our mission, and he would be our command module pilot who orbited while we went down to land. So that turned out 2 years of training. Just because the mission was extended, we got the car. We had a little rover, a lunar rover, a little electric car that we took with us. So all of that changes required an extension of the mission timeline. And we ended up launching, as I said, 2 years after we started training in April of 1961. My final assignment was as a backup pilot for Apollo 17. So I only flew once, but if you're going to have an interesting mission, landing on the moon was one of those. It was very exciting. I felt right at home. I had no fear. There was an awesome feeling, a feeling of wonder, a sense of belonging on this incredibly beautiful moonscape that Buzz Aldrin has described as a magnificent desolation. In just a few minutes, I have a film I want to show you, and it's silent, so I'll be narrating it.
Stories.
It's 14 minutes long. It starts at liftoff from Kennedy Space Center and ends as we splash down or landed in the Pacific Ocean 12 almost 11 days later. So if you could start the film, I'll narrate this next 14 minutes as you see the film commence on the moon here. So here we go. Of course, we're Apollo 16. Our three names on the flag, and we start off, as I said, at liftoff. And let me describe this vehicle. It is a Saturn V, the biggest rocket ever launched. It was 110 meters tall, 11 meters in diameter, and weighed 3 million kilograms when it lifted off. The engines, you see, there were 5 engines down there, and they were pushing with 3.5 million kilos. The white stuff you see falling off the vehicle was ice. We had several tons of ice on the side, but the vehicle was shaking so much from side to side, the ice all fell off within the first seconds. The first stage is that middle black line. You see the big black line about halfway up the vehicle. The first stage lasted for 2 minutes and 42 seconds on our mission. And we accelerated to 4.5 times gravity, about 8,000 miles an hour. And inside the spacecraft, the vibration from side to side was enormous. It wasn't pogo up and down, it was side to side. And the windows are covered over at this point, so you can't see outside. So you're just looking at this instrument panel that's shaking like crazy in front of you. The first stage, as I said, lasted for 2 minutes and 42 seconds. And in that time, we burned up 2 million kilos of fuel. And it was, then it shut down. It was like a train wreck when it shut down. You went from 4.5 times gravity to 0 gravity instantly. The first stage drops off, and then you can see the second stage. And in a moment, you'll see what it looked like from the Earth as the stage dropped off. It was a big explosion. There it is. And then the inner stage drops off, and you can see the upper end, those are the 2 of the 5 engines on the second stage. I'm sorry, 4 engines there. And that's the Atlantic Ocean. This is a picture I took about 3 hours later. We were on our way to the moon, and you're looking at the land. You see at the bottom is the coast of California and Baja California to the right. You can see the Rocky Mountains, the southwestern United States. Off to the left is the Arctic Circle. Then the Pacific Ocean is down to the bottom. And on the right side was the northern part of South America. And that jewel of beauty was just suspended in the blackness of space. Here we are in our little spacecraft on our way to the moon. That's Ken Mattingly. He's doing some exercises. John and I are just having fun in 0 gravity. You can see nothing stays still in 0 gravity. You cannot place something in 0 gravity and have it stay in position. It's going to float around. It's impossible to keep things stable and unmoving. So if you want to keep something in place where you can find it, you have to Velcro it to the side of the spacecraft. This is some of the food we had. It mostly came in dehydrated. This is a space shuttle picture. It shows grape juice in space. It all takes the shape of a sphere. And Pinky Nelson, this astronaut, sucks it in. And then we have a flying banana comes across the spacecraft in the space shuttle. We didn't have bananas, but we did have grape juice. We arrived at the moon. It took 72 hours to get there. And at that point, we powered up the lunar module on the 5th day of our mission, and we started our separation to prepare for our landing on the moon. You can see the white circle is the tracking light right above. That's the hatch that you open to get outside. Above that's the landing porch, we call it, the porch. Then you could climb down the ladder and step onto the footpad. Of course, the vehicle was right side up. You're looking at it, it looks upside down, but in space there is no upside down and zero gravity. So we're going across the moon and we have a problem, but we take 6 hours to overcome it, but Mission Control did a great job and solved our problem. And you see the command module to the left. Here we are in the final stages of descent. We're about 2,000 meters above the moon. Those black holes you see are craters, 500 meters in diameter. Now we're getting very close to the moon. We're 15 meters above the moon. We start blowing out the moon dust. You can see the shadow of the lunar module. John had picked out a very stable place to land. And when we got about 6 feet above the moon, a little light came on in the cockpit, said contact, and you shut the engine down. And instantly the dust cleared away and it got very clear. And you see in our, now looking out of the left window, John, you're looking to the south. Here John is with his first steps on the moon. We were actually on the moon about 72 hours. Looking to the south, you see Stone Mountain. And that's where we went on the second day. Our cameras were 70 millimeter Hasselblad. We had no digital cameras in those days, so I'm putting some film on the back of the camera. A black and white film had 82 pictures in its magazine. A color magazine like had 120. Our cameras had a trigger, so to take a picture, you just pointed it with your body and squeezed the trigger, and it took a picture and wound up automatically. I'm the guy on the right, and I'd put up the flag, and John Young in the red stripes comes out, and I ask him to give me a big salute, and so he gives a big jump for joy and another salute and another one. Then we swapped places, and I had my picture taken, but I wasn't so springy. This is my embarrassing moment. As I disappear to the right of your screen, I'm carrying $10 million worth of lunar experiments on this contraption called a dumbbell, and the experiments on the right side, and as I bounce across the moon, they come off. And oh, was I shocked. I mean, I thought I'd ruined $10 million worth of moon experiments. But up there, it's only 1/6 gravity. Down here, as you see me, I weighed 363 pounds or 125 kilos in more than that in my spacesuit. But up there, I only weighed 25 kilos. So you could run and you could jump and you could do a lot of things, but it was easy to lose your balance. The soil is mostly gray in color, very, very fine like powder, which is actually pulverized rock. Here I am drilling a hole into the moon. I had 3 of those to drill. They were 3 meters deep each. This is the central station where the data was collected and the power was distributed to all of our 5 experiments. I'm off the rover now, taking a picture of John driving across the rover. We called it the Grand Prix. This is the only sequence of film where it shows the rover, the whole rover underway. Normally you just see us bouncing across the moon. Here I am with a penetrometer, push it in, and unfortunately it goes in a lot farther than I expected. So I fell down, and now here's the get up procedure on the moon. You do a push up and you rock, and you do another push up and another rock and one more push up, and you're up. You can see the suits have turned gray. The moon dust is so fine that it gets in your suit, and you can't, even though we had a brush, we cannot brush it off. We normally collected rocks together as a team. I have a rake in my hand, and John's holding a bag that I'm pouring these rocks into. But we occasionally were busy, each of us, and sometimes we collected rocks together. And in this next scene, you'll see is me trying to do that. And here I am, I've got this little rock and a shovel, and I'm trying to catch it, but I drop it. It's very frustrating. But I was determined. I don't know why now, 50 years later, I wanted that rock, but I'm going to have that rock. So I pitch it up again, and this time very gently, and I catch it, but I dropped the bag I was putting it in. So we had a lot of bags up on the moon that we dropped, and a lot of rocks we dropped, but we were able to recover. Over in our flight, we had 98 kilos of moon rocks and soil samples. You're looking back to the southeast at this northeast. Southeast. In that mountain range in the back is called the Smoky Mountains. Here we're doing the Moon Olympics, and we're going to set the high jump record. It was a big mistake. Here I go, and I jump, and I fall over backwards. And if I fall on that backpack wrong, which is your life support system, I'm dead. So I had a moment of fear, and I took the turn to the right and blocked my fall with my right hand and my right leg, bounced onto my back, and my heart was pounding, but I realized I was still alive. So John helped me up, and we began our closeout. This was right at the end of our stay on the moon. I left a picture of my family on the moon. We had two sons, and they were almost 5 and 7-year-old at that point. We left our car up on the moon with the battery and the TV camera operating. And so mission control controlled the camera and watched us as we lifted off and it went into space. The ascent engine on the lunar module had to work for 7 minutes, or you're going to crash back into the moon. Fortunately, they all did, and we had no problems on ascent. And an hour later, we were rendezvoused with Mattingly at about 90 kilometers above the moon, and we started our journey home. On the way home, we had a spacewalk, but now we re-entry. We hit the atmosphere at over 40,000 kilometers per hour, and you can see the white hot fireball around the spacecraft. You can see as the spacecraft rolls back and forth, the Pacific Ocean, then again back into space, and we're controlling our landing spot. By rolling back and forth, you can control your landing spot where the spacecraft is going to land. Ours was targeted into the South Pacific, and the guidance system did an outstanding job as Ken Mattingly did as he was flying. And we landed within probably 2 kilometers of the aircraft carrier. At about 8,000 meters, the drogue chutes deploy. There were 2 chutes, small chutes that stabilized the spacecraft. And by stabilized, it didn't stop it from swinging, but it made sure that the heat shield was down. So when the parachutes came out at top above the heat shield, they weren't going to get tangled up. The main chutes deployed at about 3,000 meters, a little bit less. You can see a helicopter fly by. We knew we were close. We were talking to the ships, talking to mission control, and we were preparing for a splashdown. The seas were not calm. We had about 2-meter seas. And so when we hit flat, and there was a big splash, and the left parachute stayed inflated and flipped us over upside down. But fortunately, we had some balloons that we could inflate, and So we were back on the aircraft carrier within 30 or 45 minutes after that flight. And
Life Stories.